And I, for one, don't want my society's future to be predicated on a bet which is likely to be lost. In most of the things I care about, Islam is just the slowest kid in the class. And we all end up speaking, certainly have done for the last 15 years, at the level of the slowest kid in the class. And I think it's sort of retarding our entire society's ability to discuss things.
As riots driven by frustrations over immigration in the UK become increasingly common, the discussion about Muslim extremism infiltrating our country is becoming a priority. Douglas Murray predicted this was going to happen 8 years ago. Today, we will watch a chilling interview where he talked exactly about that. Let's begin.
What are your thoughts on these types of piecemeal approaches to Reformation, wherein you take each of the elements in the Sirah and the Quran and the Hadith and you say, no, this is really what's meant, this is how we could reinterpret it?
Never gonna happen. Kind of late to be asking this question since they are all here already. But let's see what Douglas has to say about this.
Well, first things first, I think one of the most regrettable things since 9/11 has been the fact that we've all ended up going at the speed of Islam in theological discussion, in societal discussion, in moral discussion. And I think this is a great shame because whatever Islam can or cannot do, whatever the trajectory of Islam, should not really be of great concern to Britain, say. I mean, we can't have our own future spent endlessly debating the Hadith. I mean, apart from anything else, they're not very good or interesting. Loads of them are about ridiculous stuff. I mean, I often say to people, I mean,
that's only because you don't speak Arabic. If you spoke Arabic, then you'd appreciate the nuance.
Yeah, that's right. And all the hadith about what you do with urine on your trousers and semen. I mean, all of those are really, really great in Arabic, and it's just the English doesn't quite work. but you know, it's not a very interesting discussion.
What? Discussions about urine on pants are not interesting to you? But seriously now, Muslims are asking for the impossible when they expect us to take them in endlessly and then to demand us all to abide by Sharia law. More recently, now politicians are also asking for the impossible when they threaten us with imprisonment for hate speech and expect us to not be mad about this on social media. Once, the From Keir Starmer was totally just a reflection of things when he said imprison people that committed online crimes related to the riots, which could mean absolutely anything. And this while he showed compassion for the violent riots of BLM in 2020. The double standard is real. Our politicians don't even care about the public they're supposed to serve. They're more interested in protecting the image of the illegals.
I mean, Islam is quite interesting, but it's not that interesting. And I certainly don't want to spend my life and don't want everyone else in my society and culture to spend their lives discussing Islam. I think as well, you know, in most of the things I care about, Islam is just the slowest kid in the class. And we all end up speaking, certainly have done for the last 15 years, at the level of the slowest kid in the class. And I think it's sort of retarding our entire society's ability to discuss things.
I can affirm that the speculation is correct.
I mean, I don't want to talk about whether a woman should be judged in front of an all-male panel of imams in 21st century Britain. I don't want to be discussing. I don't want to be crawling over the Quranic or any other justifications for it. I just don't want it. I don't think it's a wise thing to do in a modern society. So there's that, first of all. The second thing is that I think it's, you know, maybe Islam can reform. Maybe it's all going to go through a brilliant reformation process and so on. But, you know, maybe it won't. And I, for one, don't want my society's future to be predicated on a bet which is likely to be lost.
Well, unfortunately, the decision has already been taken. And we can keep talking about this until our mouths get dry, but the truth of the matter isn't about whether we should take the risk anymore. This is a problem of what do we do with them now, since they're all here already? And worse, that the end of this mass immigration doesn't seem to be in sight.
Reformers, I know, you know, many reformists, Muslims, and, you know, and I wish them well, I really do. I want them to win. But, you know, the history of Islam, as you well know, is that those guys often end up just all being killed, and the literalists win. And, you know, I think that's a tragedy for Islam, but it's not my tragedy. It's not my society. It's not my culture, not my religion. And whilst wishing them well, I just don't want American society or British or Western European societies to be caught up in that. And I think that is what is happening.
Why can't just somebody write up a fake and milder version of the Quran and pass it around to the fundamentalists and tell them that they've just read it incorrectly? Probably what we should be focusing on next if they really don't want to close the border down.
As we speak, it's what's happening in our societies, as well as speaking at the level of the slowest kid in the class. We're all talking that language. We're all, every ethical discussion, every scientific discussion is becoming, tainted with this. And, all the artistic discussion, I'm very keen that people know a lot about other cultures. I'm very keen for that. I like to, do it myself. I'm not a nativist sort of. I don't, think that only British food and British literature and I don't think that. I think the world is very, very interesting, but I don't want the entire world's future to be spent discussing Islam. And it just worries me enormously that is what is happening.
Islam doesn't reciprocate that sentiment. They don't really think that the culture of other people is interesting when it comes to other ethnic groups coming into their country. But when it comes to them coming into ours, suddenly they have a change of mind. They never acknowledge this inconsistency. I guess it's the type of stuff we have to expect from a culture that puts revelation above critical thinking based on the situation. I wonder how Muslims would have reacted like if the Quran said, never migrate to other countries as it's haram without any context.
Even though you may not be interested in Islam, Islam is mortally interested in you. And therefore, as the demographic realities change in the West, we can't simply say, you know what, we've had enough of discussing Islam. No. So there is going to be a head point at fork in the road. And so the question is, how do we handle that?
Absolutely spot on. I guess this is just what the politicians in this country wanted all along, or they are too afraid to speak up. Both options are equally terrible.
Everybody is welcome as long as we don't cede a single inch of our liberal values, not 1 inch. So you could come in if you're brown, purple, tall, short, fat, or thin, gay or not, as long as you abide by our values. If your beliefs, cultural or religious or others, are inconsistent with that, you're not welcome here. If they are consistent or you're willing to leave them at the door, come in, my brother, and let's live peacefully together.
And they could have always lied about this, but Muslims are not even trying to hide their intentions, and they are still allowed to come here in droves.
Do you ever foresee a time when politicians will be able to speak in this very clear manner? Because otherwise it's going to be Beirut in 1975 all over the world.
That's a very it's a very disturbing question, but I think that's the way we're going. I have to say, not soon or anything, but look, my own view is that particularly in Europe, where obviously I know most about, I think we're missing the opportunity of a soft landing on this. You see, I've seen in recent years the possibility of having a sort of softer landing on it. Mainstream politicians tackling this. Mainstream politicians also, the importance of not doing certain things. Like the Home Secretary, the former Home Secretary, who's now our Prime Minister, Theresa May. Don't use your Conservative Party conference speech to talk about your favourite passages of the Quran. Just don't do that stuff.
We live in a society where free speech is allowed. They can talk about whatever passages they want to talk about, Douglas. But seriously, I feel like the only time politicians are going to speak up with courage and conviction is only when natives are going to say, we've had enough of this, we are not going to move out of here unless you do something. And it's not funny at all. Our own leaders are expecting more from their own citizens than they are expecting from lads that arrived in boats.
It seems to me that for short-term political gain, people are still avoiding doing the things they should be doing, and holding the lines that you quite rightly describe. And we're getting worse and worse at it. And it seems to me, and I've said this for many years, but that, out way to my side, and I think to yours, an answer to this of another kind grows. And this really worries me.
And the Muslims are chilling and leaning back while they're watching our politicians give them more rights that we ourselves have. Like this is not even an exaggeration anymore in 2024. White Britons are not allowed to be Islamophobic on the World Wide Web, or else they will get arrested, whatever that may mean, while the discussion of starting to integrate some aspects of Sharia law are still raging hot.
I've said for a long time, if you've got a problem with the existing Muslim communities in your country, not that they're entirely a problem or all a problem, but if very significant problems seem to be coming from them, it doesn't make enormous sense to keep bringing in more people of that same background, because the problem will obviously grow, the proportion to the number of people grows. And this, for many, has been a very controversial thing to say. I think it's a very obvious thing to say, but it's been a very controversial thing to say. I was saying, let's slow down, limit the immigration, and you can do something with the people who are here and in time, etc., etc. But now I find myself in this position where, the president-elect of the United States, said on the campaign, no Muslims should come into the US for a period. And I hear that and far more on the continent. And so I find myself feeling, like the sort of wet lefty liberal on some of this.
Douglas Murray is a feminist, confirmed?
Put it at its frankest, this is very, very troubling. I don't think that everyone on the continent, in particular, who's opposed to mass immigration or anything like that, is a fascist. But far from it. But we really have to exercise enormous care. And I think because of the name calling and the lack of care and the cowardice and a whole set of other things, we're leaving this job to be done by people that we would not want to do it. And as I say, it's a hard landing will be the only resulting possibility, and that should trouble everybody.
And it just seems like we aren't even allowed to bring in a parachute because the government won't allow it. And if they are so insistent on keeping the borders wide open, then we'll just have to keep an eye out and see what ideas they come up with when what's inevitable is going to happen. I feel like it's getting a little better, though. Anyway, this is all I had for today. If you want to watch more of our content, you can click on the videos on screen and watch how Douglas handles an emotional Palestine supporter or a Muslim activist that's allergic to reality, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.